Good evening and buenas noches, everybody. My name is Liz Fernandez. I have coordinated the job fair for the last 26 years, and I'm really excited to host this evening's webinar on transitioning from classroom to an administrative role. We have with us two current independent school colleagues who will, in just a moment, introduce themselves. I just want to frame this evening, if you're listening live or if you're listening after, um, asynchronously. Our audience and our target questions and conversation and responses really are to help you gain as much information as you can about how to present yourself as a viable candidate to transition from the classroom to an administrative role. And one thing that's important to know as you're listening to our panelists is that it may not happen immediately. It's not a reflection on you. There are lots of other factors. And so as you listen to the journey, you'll understand that there are some opportunities and some bumps in the road and some ways in which our panelists handled those moments that were less than ideal at times. So with that, I'm going to invite Helen and Hassan to introduce themselves and let us know where do you work and what role are you in? How long have you been at your particular school? What kind of school is it? So tell us a little bit about the school. And because of the nature of this topic, we know you've worked in previous places. So tell us a little bit about your professional journey in describing those schools and in those places as well. And again, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Helen and Hassan, for being with us this evening.
I guess I'll go. My name is Hassan Wilson. I am the K to 12 Dean of Studies at Friends Seminary, which is K to 12 independent Quaker school in the Union Square area, New York City. Um, I've this is maybe year 21 or 22 at Friends Seminary, so I've been there a long time. I started off my teaching career in public school in the Bronx, in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And then I came to Friends Seminary as a science teacher. Started off as a sixth grade homeroom teacher, and then I've taught so many different grade levels and divisions. So I've taught in the lower school, the middle school, and the upper school, different types of classes and different topics, subjects. Um, and I was a science department chair for about 10 years. And then I joined the upper school office. I was the assistant head of upper school. And then during the pandemic, I took on an executive director role at an online school. And then this new position opened up at Friends Seminary, and I was invited to apply. And then this is year number 3 as the Dean of Studies at Friends Seminary. So it's been a long and wonderful role at Friends.
Hello, everyone. My name is Helen Fong. I am the Assistant Upper School Director at Everett Community School. And what upper school means for us is the middle school, sixth grade to the eighth grade. I've been at BCS for 17 years. I actually started at BCS as a Mandarin part-time teacher. So that is that's how I started there. I was hired as Mandarin, and then they were trying to help me to become a full-time position teacher. I was teaching math, so I taught math, taught Mandarin. I was an advisor. And then slowly did student life coordinator, diversity coordinator, department of world language, and then about 4 years ago, I had invited to apply to be the assistant upper school director, and that's the role that I'm in now.
Thank you both once again. So much experience and two very different kinds of schools. And thank you, Helen, for reminding us of what upper school means for your particular school, VCS. Just a reminder to everyone, it's a school that ends in eighth grade. Unlike a continuing school like Friends Seminary where Hassan is. So I would love to hear a little more about your journey. You mentioned a little bit about your teaching role, but science and languages, math, etc. I'm really curious to hear more about what motivated you to transition from your teaching role to an administrative position. And more specifically, as you share your journey with us, how did you know you were ready? Did you approach it as being in an administrative role is something you have to prepare for? And if so, what did you do to prepare? And then how did you know? Or was it something that you just thought was like the natural progression and or anything in between? I hope that makes sense. Helen, I'd love to invite you to start.
So for me, for my journey, wow, now it's like really going back to memory lane. I think was I was a part-time mentoring teacher. I was at grad school during that time, and I was consistently advocating, asking for a full-time position, offering what I can do, what areas of that any areas of the school that I can offer my service, and do say I I love the school. I love the kids. And I do know, remember that when I was a part-time teacher, I tried to be part of the community to really, for me to understand if this is a school I also want to grow into a full-time position. I'm involved. I get to know the teacher. I participate in staff meeting. I try to find opportunity to be part of the school to really get a full understanding the mission statements, how do they live, and how does the school run, how is a community culture feels like. Because sometimes being a part-time, you can also feel a little lonely and not fully knowing the school. So well, through that, really putting myself wanting to know about what is going on, I feel like it requires a lot of yeses. But at that time, I was still in grad school, so I have the time to say yes. And I think that's one thing that it's consistently in my journey from in the classroom to now the position I am in is not afraid to say yes and not afraid to ask questions when you are like, wait a second, I just say yes. I also have some questions. Who can help me with that besides my own studying resource and educating. And then by that time, I think I really want to share with everyone today is that build your own resource pool, like your professors. Start with your professors, your classmates. Build your own resources pool early because you are all helping each other grow more brains better than one brain. And when you are start working at a school, I slowly identify who is going to be I will say less of a boss, but who's going to be my mentor, who is going to be the one that who will want to watch me grow and advocate for me, who's that person for me. And at first, it was just a few teacher were like advocating for me, like at that time, like say, oh, I think you should try this, or invite me to go on a field trip, invite me to serve on the committee. Get to know your people and the resource, build from there, because that's how you continue getting stronger. Um, Never say no to a professional development opportunity. Every time when they invite you, say yes, go and learn. Because the more you learn, the stronger you get. And I think the more you learn, you also get to know other people. So throughout my journey from being a mentoring part-time to now, what I would say what I did, I say a lot of yeses, but I'll be honest, it's not easy. And I don't want to say it's easy. Sometimes it can be stressful and scary, but yes, this is the only way you try new things. And sometimes you might try it and not really enjoy that role. That's also okay. But saying yes open the doors for you, and not to be afraid to advocate what you can bring to the school or your interest. I always remember when I'm building my own pool of resources, one of the teacher always tell me, think about what you can do for the school that they always need you. Like, what do you have? What can you offer that they always need you? And that stick to me. And then based on my interest, I find things I want to dive into. And what I did was a school international trips at our school. I really want to bring our students out of the building, not just keep everything in the building. I do believe kids need to see the world. And I really want to fight for them to go see not just like a tour trip, but like I want them to see China. I want them to see Taiwan. I want them to like when they asked me what's your dream, I said it out loud, not knowing if it's possible or not. And then they're like, okay, look into it. So I think it's a combination. Always says yes, be ready to do the work. And sometimes on the journey, you might feel like your efforts are not being seen or being paid accordingly. There are times going to feel like that, but think about it as every time when you do a research, do a work, you're actually building for yourself. It's a skill that you gain for yourself that no one can take for you. So I saying yes, that's what I did. And then I think finding the right people, and I was lucky enough to find I think we call them, I think like in a private school, we call them the sponsor, the mentor. I find that one person that are constantly asking me, what's your 3 year goals for yourself? What's your 5 year goals for yourself? What's your 10 year goals for yourself? At first, I didn't really like these questions because they're like, I cannot even survive day to day. How am I going to look for my 3 years and 5 years and 10 years? Let me just get through my, day and my job. But those are the one that, those moments are the moment that I learn how to dream big. What do I want? What's important for me? And the other moment, another moment that happened to me. So the first moment was, what do you do for a school? The school will keep you. And then the other moment was asking me, what are my goals, 3 years, 5 year, 10 years? My other moment that in my journey was that I found myself that saying what I wanted to do. I am starting to not be afraid when I have an idea. Even if it get rejected, it's okay. I start putting my ideas out there. If you want to take it, great. If not, it's okay. Like that building that confidence and identify your sponsor and mentor in this journey because they are your sounding board. They'll be like, okay, Helen, pull it back a little. Okay, Helen, this is what you can do. Those are the people I also know. This is where you can go. And then when you have that sponsor and mentor, I also think that in this journey, you need to know who you are and what's important for you. And as a person of color, that was really hard at the beginning because as an Asian woman, I tend to more of a quiet side, more on reserve. And I just started to notice, I started going to POCC, People of Color Conference. I learned that I have to advocate for myself. I cannot continue just staying quiet. And then you meeting having those, I think POCC really helped me to be strong, to advocate for myself. So the third moment is at the moment I feel comfortable in who I am and what I can offer and be able to advocate for myself. So I think I feel like I'm talking a lot, taking a lot of time, but I think that's my journey. Those are the few big points I hope that you pass on to anybody on their journey to become an admin.
Thank you so much, Helen. Oh my gosh, that was so rich. And I hope that when you are listening, you're hearing some of those wonderful strategies and tips that are coming from our panelist. Hassan, we want to bring you into this conversation. Tell us about your journey. Tell us about your experience and your process um, around being ready and what did that look like and sound like and feel like?
Sure. So I think I was teaching about 17 years before I moved into admin. So it's been only a handful of years that I've been exclusively admin. And I think the realization I had was I was feeling like I needed a different type of a challenge. I wasn't really sure whether administration was the right path or if I would consider maybe even going outside of education. Um, and so at the time I was a department chair, and I remember feeling not as much interest or motivation in some of the work I knew needed to be done. And so I felt like my motivation was starting to wane a bit. And I think I was also considering that I had a really strong team, and that I was pretty sure we were going to lose some folks if I didn't step aside and pursue something else. Because I had a number of folks, even I look at them today and they're all, I don't know, half of them are department chairs or some other role. So had a really strong team. So I think it was time to step aside. And I actually remember going to my head of school at the time and pitching similar to what Helen was saying, that I saw a need in the school. And I remember pitching to my head of school at the time, saying, "Yeah, I think this is a big need in the school. I would love to help out with this." I did not get the yes. I got, the no that, there's no money for that position, yada, yada. But, we are going to start a search for assistant head of upper school. Maybe that's something, you might want to pursue. And, even though it wasn't exactly the thing that I was looking for, I saw enough in the role that I said, okay, yeah, I can see myself doing this for a number of years. And, I applied, I got the job. And I grew into the job. I gained some interesting skills. I learned to school in a new way. I was in conversations that I didn't even know were happening at the time. So it really did, I think, help me in my path. And even though it wasn't the thing I was like set out to do, I'm really grateful and I'm glad that I took advantage of the opportunity, because I do think it opened, as Helen was saying about opening doors, I think it opened up doors that maybe today wouldn't necessarily be open, just because I was willing just to, to say yes. I was really looking for something more on the academic side than like, divisional leadership. Um, but what I did is I looked at the portfolio of things that did overlap my role, and I really put in a lot of hours working on those things and developing those skills. And then of course, I think I gained other skills or practice other skills that are, and we'll talk about transferable skills a little bit later. But I think there were definitely enough transferable skills. That I think helped me on the path. So that was, and there was also, I'll be honest here, maybe I shouldn't be so honest, but transparent, but there was also a financial piece that I was thinking about as well. How can I support my family in a different way? And moving into admin definitely has been helpful in that regard.
Thank you both. I wanted to double click on a few things that you both shared, just to make sure that everyone who is listening really captures some key points. First and foremost, we never know if we're 100% ready. I mean, that's just the reality. We test the waters, we join committees, we're part of different search processes, we're um, sitting in on class demos or demonstrations, giving feedback, being part of all of the different ways that our schools allow us and encourage us to be part of the fabric of schools. We are also doing professional development. One of the key takeaways for me in my own journey, that I offer as a concrete step is look at position descriptions. Read what they say. And when there's a voice perhaps that's in your head that says you don't have all of these skills, ignore it. Overwhelmingly, women and people of color do not pursue positions because they read the description and decide they don't have every single skill, check, 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 and they decide that they're not going to pursue it. And we're never going to be fully ready. We're never going to be perfect. There's never going to be a perfect position. There are always going to be opportunities. And don't just read positions that come up in your school. Read positions that are coming up elsewhere. See what other schools are doing. Take a sneak peek at how schools are talking about curriculum. They're talking about athletics. They're talking about visual and performing arts. They're talking about student leadership, the ways in which the mission is informing the impact that the school aims to have over a period of time, the identity of the school. Are there specific values that are critical and important? All of that content that you are looking up is also helping to prepare you for that transition. And I will also add that if you see a position within your school, please know that the second that you indicate interest, it is now officially you are on notice that you have started the interview process. That is the reality. And everything that's happened prior to that point now enters into the, the repertoire of memories and moments where um, you've been in consideration for a role. And that can be a really good thing, and that can be a really challenging thing. And the only reason why I'm bringing it up is because we are all one step away from whatever our next role is, because every job that we have opens the door for the next job or the next opportunity or the next position. And if you stay and pursue an opportunity within the school, there is a level of exposure that you now have within that school with your colleagues and peers that didn't exist in the same way prior to. And that's an important piece to think about when you think about being ready to make a transition. I'm wondering if either of you had any specific challenges that evolved. And I'll give you a specific scenario. For many of us, we have served in teaching roles where we have had peers, and then we step into a role where our peer now becomes someone who is directly reporting to us, or that we now have to supervise. I'm curious for you to speak to, did you experience a transition or a challenge in that realm? Is there another challenge that you experienced from going from classroom to admin that you would like to briefly speak to and share how you overcame that particular challenge? Whoever wants to go first, by all means.
I, I would say one thing is imposter syndrome. That's been something, and I would say, your question is how did I overcome it? Overcome it. I would say that's very much a work in progress. I truly respect my colleagues, and I look at, there are a lot of smart, hardworking people. And I think sometimes I've thought, well, why am I in this role, overseeing all these really incredibly smart, intelligent people? Um, and sometimes I have to remind myself that I've met people in roles like mine who did not have the resume that I have, or the experience that I have, or the accomplishments that I have. So I think some of it is you just have to remind yourself, no one's giving you a job, they're not just handing out jobs to people. So if you apply for a job and they offered you the job, there are reasons why they offered you the job. So I think that I'm still very much and I think some of this is racial, with the imposter syndrome, and that these schools were not initially designed for us. Um, and so I still think that's very much a work in progress. And I think I have to just keep on reminding myself when there's ups, when I accomplish something, when I think about my experience, that's really been really helpful to me. But I think that's been that has been a challenge. And as I mentioned earlier, just finding the right role has also been a challenge. And I finally feel that I'm doing the work that I should be doing. But I know when I initially went into administration, I wasn't quite sure exactly what role I was looking for.
Um, I think for me, transition from, I think it really resonate with me, because I recently also had a conversations with our head of school about the transition between having colleagues to now being their supervisor and that line. And because I am more of a relationship person, that I build relationship, and I will say it's a work in progress. And after now, I am I'm comfortable now, but I think it's slowing down. And I think what I did, and I would thank EOI program for that, is I figured out what kind of leader do I want it to be, what kind of leader that, inspire me. I kind of really did some understanding about who do I want to be as a leader, not based on a copy and paste of other leadership I seen, or what kind of leadership I want to, like, I had to do it this way. This is the only right way. I think what I spending time knowing who you are, and it's okay for you to lead it in your own way. So I am talking so throughout the process I will continue talking to them. I always consider that we're colleagues with them. I ask them for help. I'm not afraid to ask for help. I still care for them as I learned that still take care of, treat them the way that I will also want to be treated. And then think about if I have a supervisor that who's also my colleague, but now has power over me, what do I want to experience? So it took sometimes because either from the beginning people was like, oh, now you're an M and tell me what's the decision. Like they're using that as a channel to get more information. But how do you say no to that and still stay firm and still be okay with the discomfort to they eventually just don't ask you. They eventually I think respect it's earned. So I don't rush it through. So when you are transitioning into an administration role, um, it's not going to suddenly be all good and okay. And then, but it does take time to earn their trust and respect and seeing you in that role. So slowing down, it's okay, and asking for help. It's also okay. Like I am new in this. I need to ask for help with someone who has more experience or even the teacher. I have this idea, initiative that I want to run. Can I brainstorm with you? So like even including pulling the teachers in, it's also another way to closer the gap between now you are my supervisor, but we were friends before.
Thank you so much. As we transition into administrative responsibilities, part of our role is to work to empower teachers. Part of our role is to continue to keep students at the center of every decision that we make, um, keeping students at the center of every conversation. How do you balance the administrative responsibilities that you have with your commitment to keep students at the center? Knowing that it's a balancing act. Sometimes you have to hold the one versus the many, the community versus the individual student. As administrators, we are often privy to more information than our teaching colleagues are. And I've often said, everybody wants transparency, everybody wants information as long as it's not about them or their child. And so, how have you balanced really trying to live up to your vision for an administrator who really empowers teachers and someone who really is committed to students at the center of all decision making? What's come up for you? How have you found the opportunities and moments to balance?
I'll go. Students are everything for me. I think that's what brings me to work. They bring me joy. And when I first got this role, I did ask to continue being an eighth grade advisor so I can still be in the student life portion. And then eventually my time, I don't have enough time to do it. But one of my mentor did tell me that, Helen, if you care so much about these kids and train more teacher to do the work that you care about. And I think that's one thing that I hold on to is that it's just because my role has changed, how can I spend more time with the kids? By doing that, I am training more teachers to see the child as a full child. And I think because of my role, I actually can serve the kids even more in a way because of the parents' relationships. They email us, they talk to us, they want to meet with us, our relationship with the guidance team. It opened up doors that now I am not just like the kids in a classroom. I think we get to see the full child. We get to talk to their therapist. Like, yes, there are like, I think there are information that's being shared more privately, but now since you know how to train the teachers to support the students. And I still believe that even though our role title has changed, but your relationship with the kids are still staying the same. The way you say hello to them, you go by classes, you're sitting in their class, you just sit down in lunchtime. I still spend time at lunch, sit down with them and eat with them. I will go out of my way to greet them and they earn their trust. So when they have something or they needed something, they can knock on my office, always open door policy. They can come and talk to me about it. If I'm busy, please send me an email, write me a note. It's like because we are doing this work for them. And then if without their voice and getting to know them, I cannot do a good job in my role. So it is I enjoy it. So that's why I always try to go on every field trip. I always volunteer myself to chaperone the teachers. And it's a great way to get stuck on the bus with all of those kids. So putting yourself out there, and I do think at the beginning it will be hard to balance your work time. Sometimes I feel like work-life balance sometimes is out of the window, and then my family will be like, "Why are you taking care of other people's kids and not your own?" And then it's like a big battle that I have to go like in between myself and my own family. So I feel like it does take time. There are hard times. Don't give up because eventually you will find that balance for yourself. That now the trick I do, but it might work for some of you, it might not, is like during the day, I know myself that besides some urgent emails, my goal is to serve the teachers and the students. But the moment 3:30 hits, I am focusing on my emails and replying and responding and making my phone calls. But so I don't feel guilty during the day. Why am I not checking my email or things like that? I really split up my day so I am comfortable with what I am doing.
Yeah, a lot of what Helen said really resonates with me. I won't repeat her answer, but I will share a concrete example that I've been working on this year. I really feel like this, it's my third year in a row, and I feel like now is the point in time where I'm really internalizing what this job means and how to do it. And I've been really trying to think of ways to almost operationalize centering students because my role is very adult centric. I really interface with department chairs, with teachers. Yes, I'm an advisor. Some years I teach, some years I don't. Um, and so, we've been working on this project on our how we use our LMS Canvas. And there've been we adopted it in during the pandemic. And I sort of when I joined in this role, I sort of took on the leadership of how how to set up Canvas and all that kind of stuff. And what we noticed is that there was just a lot of variation in how the different courses were set up and how teachers were using Canvas. And it really made for a really tough experience for our students. So one of my projects has been thinking about how do we standardize the use of Canvas. Um, and so one thing, I did was and last spring is I surveyed all of our middle and upper school students, so I can just get a fuller picture about what their experience is like with our learning management system. And it sorted through a lot of data. I think I learned a lot about their experience. And then I interface with Instructure, which owns Canvas, and they look through our Canvas instance. And this year, I created a advisory group that is a mix of teachers as well as some of our student leaders. And so we have developed some best practices and guidelines for how to use Canvas, and that was informed by the data that I collected from students, as well as we did professional development, and Structure really taught us about best practices. And so right now we are finalizing our recommendations for how to use Canvas. And then I'm going to have my student leaders actually pick our new course template. And so while my job is very much adult facing, I'm looking for ways to involve students in our academic program. And that could be from, focus groups to surveys just to get a fuller picture of their experience, as well as being members of different committees or groups that I form to give me recommendations and to think about proposals for how to make changes in the school. So I'm really trying to lean on that model for it's a new thing in our school, having our students as involved in the sort of academic decision making. They've been really involved in sort of like the extracurricular, the student programming side. And that's something that I'm really interested in exploring. And I think our next step is having something similar with AI, I think is the sort of next big thing where we want to make sure we're getting a fuller picture of our students' experience with AI, as well as having them be part of some type of cross teacher student group to offer recommendations.
That sounds like a fantastic both strategy and initiative that you've launched because as you framed, sometimes our administrative roles make us set us on a path that is very adult facing. And so it does require us to be uniquely creative in how we can interact with and bring in student voice and cultivate student leadership in the ways in which are going to make sense. And yes, it does involve multiple steps and a lot of follow up and follow through. Um, and it's worth it because at the end, we are able to fulfill the responsibility of really empowering teachers and helping them to better understand the impact writ large. I mean, Hassan, what you mentioned is you've got students taking 5, 6, 7, 8 classes, and if teachers are using the Canvas um, differently in each class, that's a multimodal experience that students are having and add neurodiversity into the picture and just life and all of those challenges. So there's some really rich opportunities for us to think about what does it mean to serve as in an admin role to really support students and to really support the adults. There's a question that's been brought up um, and Hassan, I want to draw attention just for a moment. There's a question that was asked in the chat about um, that Helen already answered just regarding did you transition into leadership? I think someone joined a little bit later within your current school. So if you could take a moment and just respond. There's another question for us to think about, which is when you were building your resource pool, how did you distinguish between the skills that you thought were valuable and those that are considered indispensable? The person who asked the question is really curious about what the discernment process looked like for us and being able to distinct the nice to have from the must have or like the essential.
Well, I think to quickly talk about the transition. Yes, I transitioned within the school that I was teaching, and the various roles that I've done have been at the same school, except for during the pandemic when I was a ED of an online school.
Great, thanks. Helen, do you want to begin to tackle that question or you want me to start? Answer whichever one works. Okay. So for me, the things that I think there are a great deal of transferable skills between a classroom teacher and an admin. I'm going to highlight a few. You've got multiple students in a class. You've got to engage in a level of differentiation to make sure that you're really supporting all of your students in all possible ways. As an administrator, I have the same challenges as I am trying to support the adults in the community who have lots and lots of needs, and they're all essential to their success in that moment. There are multiple disciplines. There's the volume of emails that is never ending. There is always work to do. There is always a project to launch, an email to respond to, something to follow up on, data to analyze, an idea to flesh out, someone to connect with at school to pursue something that, you haven't had time to. There's always something to do. But what I think are essential is how you talk about those the resources that you have. Because I would argue that every skill that you acquire is essential because it helps to make you who you are as a leader. So if you don't, as a classroom leader, as an administrative leader in a school, all the skills are essential. So your ability to multitask. I know that they say that there's no such thing as multitasking. I would argue profusely against that point. I think people have the ability to multitask and be able to accomplish different things. The ability to center students and think about the good of the one and the many, and that balance. The ability to be able to think about all of the ways in which we have to, all the data that we have to consider in responding. We are often privy, as I said, to more information than others. So how do we communicate in a way that continues to cultivate a sense of trust and at the same time answers the question or whatever the question is? Um, and then there are just all the other challenges that unfold. The ability to manage conflict, conflict between students, conflict between student and adult, conflict between parent and student, conflict between adult colleague and student, conflict, every now and then there are parents who have conflicts and it's brought in and we have to find ways to support all parties. So I think the conflict piece, I think the ways in which we think about what does it mean to lead today is essential. Helping students to discern the difference between information that is factually based and can be proven and information that is conjecture and fabricated, and helping students to develop those critical thinking skills, also essential. And if we don't do our own work around the impact of social media and technology in the teaching and learning realm, we are at an enormous disadvantage because our students are light years ahead of us already because we're all walking around with there it is, the device. So we all have information at our fingertips. So those would be some of the ways that I would answer that question. I'd love to invite either of you to respond as well.
Oh, I thought Helen was going.
Sure, I
Uh,
can. Sure, you want to go?
oh, go ahead. You go.
Okay. I will very, very much agree with Liz that you need all skills. I think that I would say learn as much you can, use everything you have because you never know what you need. And I think the person in administration role is that you also never know what's really going to happen the day you walk into that building. You plan, I think the day doesn't go the way you plan often. That's what I learned. And I learned how to be flexible. I learned how to be okay not to finish things. I learned how to be gentle with myself. Is that I am a person love to finish like work to a good place before I go home. And the moment I become admin, I just realize that that's impossible. Like I just can't. There's not enough hours of the day. But how do I know what are something that I need to get done? What are some things can wait? And what are the times that I can multitask that we can multitask? I feel like everybody you need to know, you can do so much more than you think you can. When you're in the moment, you're able to reply to an email, waiting for a phone call, and the kids coming in, you just do it. Um, but I will say, yes, please collect as much phone call. Oh, no, not phone call. I was looking at the call. Please collect as much skills and tools as you can because you never know. Because the teachers you're helping with are all very different. And I think what one thing I really want to share is that the for me to be transition from teacher to admin or and then now knowing myself, what I learned is that knowing my own identity, that work is it's very important. Spend time to know who you are and who do you want to be as a leader, and even a leader in a classroom, leader in a school, leader as an admin. There's different ways of being a leader about what is your most important uh, characteristics that you want to have and spend the time knowing who your audience are. I think that what goes a long way is that you're using your tools to get to know the students. Every student is different. All their needs are different. You get to know the families. How do they communicate? Their family background. You get to know the teacher, right? The teacher's national, their identity, who they are from, what kind of education do they have? What's their communication style? Um, And then I feel like knowing people and then knowing where they are coming from will be that itself, it will help you to be more successful in the role because as human, we all want to be seen and heard. And because we are in a role that we have the ability and power to make difference, we have to make sure that we are seeing and hearing other people. Um, so that's one thing I will say. Collect as much tools and skills you have, and then use that to get to know your people in the school building, because those relationships, it's how you make change.
And I'll quickly add that one thing that I think maybe goes without saying is um, most of the administrators at schools are former teachers. I don't know, plus 90 something percent, I'm sure. Um, a deep understanding of what good teaching looks like and what makes learning possible, I think are essential because the decisions you're making, um, the observations you make, the initiatives that you take on, or even just the questions you ask are going to be informed by what's good teaching and learning. Another thing that I think maybe is easy to take for granted is resilience and um, you're in a really public job and as an administrator, and there will be 99 different opinions about what you're doing. And so you have to be able to, yes, take the feedback that makes sense to take, but also you have to filter out a lot of different opinions about what you're doing. Even if you do what most people say you should be doing, you'll still have people who saying you're not doing what you should be doing. So I think having that kind of resilience, that maybe that sort of emotional and mental toughness, I think is a part of that job. That sometimes you're making some really tough decisions, and it can be a lot of pressure, I think, as well. So I think it's important to go into it with your eyes wide open.
Thank you both. I want to pivot in the time that we have left to just give uh, a couple of words to our audience about the job fair that's coming up, just to give you some framing and some language. So ideally, you have a resume that is prepared that speaks to your interest in transitioning into an administrative position or continuing to grow in an administrative position. It is okay to have multiple resumes. In fact, I think it is necessary to have multiple resumes because of the different kinds of roles that you might pursue and the fact that our careers are no longer as linear as perhaps they once were um, years ago or when we started in our professions. So having different resumes that speak to and highlight different skills, maybe the way you organize information, maybe how you lead, the content, all of that I think is important to pay attention to. And it is okay to have two different kinds of resumes even at the job fair. So I want to say that up front. When you arrive at the job fair on Saturday, if you pre-register in advance, you're going to receive early next week a message with all of the schools. And on that school directory, you'll get all the websites. My suggestion is if you haven't already done so, you go to the NYSAIS website and you look at careers and the job bank, and that you go to the individual schools that are of interest to you, that are nearby, that speak to your teaching pedagogy and your philosophy that you're familiar with, and check out some that you're not familiar with and see what's being posted, knowing full well, everyone, it is still early in the process. Hiring season for many of our schools will go into April easily. And depending on some decisions, it may be May, June, or July. I've seen it all. So I think patience is part of the process. As you see a position also that's posted on the day of the job fair, on the job postings board, feel free to go to a table and introduce yourself and say, I've been teaching for X number of years, or I've been in this role for X number of years, and I am really interested in the position that you've posted. Uh, with administrative responsibilities. Here are the professional developments that I've attended. Here are the aspects of the job that are in line with what I've done or the experiences that I have had. I am eager to learn more. I'm eager to challenge myself. I'm eager to think about the profession of being in education differently than I'm currently in. And I'd love the opportunity to pursue that in a school that matches the same values that I have. That is a fairly simple way of introducing yourself, grounded in what you've done and in the ways in which you have experience that you're going to bring, and expressing an interest in pursuing a new opportunity at their particular school. Um, so, and there are lots of ways that that could sound. I think it depends on the role, it depends on your experience. Um, but ultimately, take the chance. Don't, Helen said at the beginning, say yes, go up to the table. It's the one day, there's going to be over 85 schools. It's one day, 3 hours on Saturday, February 21st, for you to be at your best, focused and ready to explore new opportunities. So that's my closing piece of advice and sort of just the overview of what that experience will look like. If you have not already pre-registered, I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to pre-register. Our schools will gain access to the candidate database early next week, and they'll have a few days to review if they have time, but do not read into that if they don't reach out for any reason. Our schools are super busy, and for many of our schools, we have Monday and Tuesday off in celebration of President's Day and Lunar New Year. So for those of us that know what this is like, we're now trying to cram 5 days worth of work into 3. And that in and of itself is a challenge. I ask you, Helen and Hassan, in closing, what is a piece of advice that you would give teachers that are considering that move into an administrative role? Like what's a good piece of advice that you think would be helpful for people to leave our time together carrying?
I would say look for leadership opportunities even at your current school. And when I say leadership opportunities, I don't necessarily mean a new role. There are things that I have done, and sometimes, some people might kind of may not agree with this, but sometimes I volunteered to do some work that I wasn't necessarily compensated for, that I thought would give me a good experience, that it would develop skills, it would build my resume. And sometimes that was, joining a committee or a task force or identifying a problem or issue in the school that I was happy to lend my services to. And so I think I've done that a number of times, and that I think gets you you build relationships with folks at your school that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily have done. It builds skills. You get to learn how schools run in a different way. There are a lot of decisions that I wasn't even aware that were taking place. And then when I volunteered to take on some stuff, that I became aware of that. There are things you could do, like find people who are doing roles that you're interested in. You can interview them. You can ask to shadow them. Those are all things that I definitely recommend.
I have my two little tricks are always saying yes. I always says how can I help? Every time when I hear about an idea or a problem or I notice something, this is like even I will go to my division director or whoever is in charge and say, what you mentioned, I'm really interested. How can I help? Because admin positions is a title, but there's so many things that you can do. You're making changes and leading. Um, so, and then also on the little things, it's also lower risk in some way because you might feel like, wait a second, in this area, this is not what I want to do. I want to try something different. But while you're trying different things, you're gaining something skills, you're getting more clear-minded about what you are enjoying or something that you don't like, or what are some area you can gain more information and learn more on your own. So always says yes. And how can I help? And I think school really value anybody like that in their community because now you're invested, you care, you're listening. You're not just coming in to do their job and leave. You want to be part of it. And the more you say it, it's like they are more they will notice you, and therefore when something does happen, they're like, wait a second, that person always said they want to help. Who is that? Let's ask that person to help and join the team. So speak up.
Thank you both so very much, Hassan and Helen. Your kernels of wisdom have just been such a gift to all of us. Thank you, of course, to Rakia and my partners at NYSAIS for the support, for everyone who joined us live and who is still listening. We appreciate you and hope that this was helpful. My piece of suggestion to all of you, my piece of advice, if you haven't already served on a hiring committee, I would encourage you to be part of the process for you to understand from beginning to end the ways in which hiring unfolds. Chances are most of us don't remember our own experiences. And it's important for you to be thinking about what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like in 2026, going into 2027. So definitely be part of a committee. And remember that if you decide to pursue an opportunity at within your school, remember that the interview process has already started the second that you mention that you're interested. And if you decide to pursue an opportunity at another school, definitely be aware that it is important for you to do as much research as you possibly can so that you come in as fully prepared. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to leverage connections and contacts that you might have to gain a deeper and richer understanding of what is the opportunity at a new place. And with that, thank you, Helen. Thank you, Hassan. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Excuse me. Have a wonderful weekend. If you are celebrating the Lunar New Year, may it be a healthy and happy new year for you. And we look forward to seeing you next Saturday, the 21st. NYSAIS Job Fair to Promote Diversity, 37th Annual at Columbia Grammar and Preparatory School from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We look forward to seeing you there. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Happy New
Bye.
Year.